Okay, hi at 5:30. It is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. This is our study session. Number one on our agenda for the study session is long-range financial forecast. Director Sager, there you are. You have the floor.
Okay. At the request of City Council, staff analyzed two scenarios to understand potential impacts to the long-range financial plan. And those two scenarios were a $1 million transfer from the Parks and Recreation Fund into the Capital Fund and potential revenue from the sale of 90 Mead Lane. When the Capital Fund was created in 2011, two revenue sources were identified and dedicated to the fund. The first was the specific ownership tax, which was transferred from the general fund, and the second was the $1 million of property tax revenue, which was transferred from the Parks and Recreation Fund. Since then, the specific ownership tax has been transferred back to the general fund, and the $1 million of property tax revenue has been transferred back into the Parks and Recreation Fund. Transferring the $1 million of property tax revenue back into the capital fund is possible. However, the revenue will still be restricted and can only be spent on parks and recreation purposes. It cannot be used for typical capital expenses, such as the purchase of a new police department vehicle or street improvement projects. Staff will be required to track the restricted revenue from the $1 million and all related expenditures separately within the capital fund, almost creating a mini Parks and Recreation Fund within the capital fund. At this time, staff is recommending against transferring the $1 million. Staff's current process is to budget for the Parks Division capital purchases and projects in the capital fund and to transfer the exact amount of these expenditures from the Parks and Recreation Fund at the end of the year. The city purchased 90 Mead Lane in 2004 for just over $1.9 million. In past meetings, City Council has considered the possibility of selling this property. 90 Mead Lane has not been appraised recently, so staff used a placeholder amount of $3 million in the long-range financial plan attached as Exhibit C to the memo. Just as a reminder, all long-range financial plans include various assumptions for both revenue and expenditures that could impact dates for the capital fund and the general fund. The chart in front of you shows the baseline long-range financial plan currently indicates the general fund will begin supplementing the capital fund in 2027 and will fall below minimum fund balance requirements in 2031. Including the potential revenue in the capital fund for the sale of 90 Mead Lane changes these dates to 2029 and 2032 respectively. If City Council is interested in exploring the option of selling 90 Mead Lane, the next step would be to have the property formally appraised. And with that, staff is happy to answer any questions City Council may have at this time.
Councilor Blum.
I guess my question really relates to looking at Exhibit B, the ballot questions. It seems to me 2B, C, and D were all advisory. And since they're advisory, we do not have to follow it. You know, I was advising that, I think that's City Council at that time and not. So if we wanted to do the transfer, we're not restricted by the advisory ballot back in, was it 2002?
2002.
Is that correct, Council?
Not by the advisory questions, but we are still restricted by the actual ballot question itself.
Yeah, the ballot language itself, Al. That's the restriction.
Yeah, okay. All right. That's no question.
Okay. Councilor Gallagher.
Jessica, the sale of 90 Mead Lane, it really is it.
Oh, Mike.
Sorry.
Mike.
Jessica, the sale of 90 Mead Lane at $3 million, it's forecast at $3 million. It's really not pushing us down the road that far.
Not that far, no.
And it looks like just a couple of years is all that it's going to add
I'll go back.
to it.
Correct.
Only 1 year?
1 year on the
Two.
telephone.
$3 extra million only gets you 1 more year?
Two.
Well, 20.
For the
I don't
gen-
get I don't really care about you know, contributing, or general fund contributing to the capital fund, because that's always the way it's been. I'm more interested in when we get to reserves, and it seems like $3 million, and I don't wanna usurp, but that was my question too, is all fund total, okay, 2042, I was looking at 2032, that's why the number's, okay.
And similarly, the 1% mill, it really only pushes it down a little ways. Again, another couple of years. Am I catching that right?
So the 1 mil going into the capital fund,
Yeah.
that we would have to restrict that. So that wouldn't supplement the capital fund like the $3 million would from the sale of 90 Mead Lane. We would have to track that separately. So that could only be spent on parks and recreation purposes. So we would have to create new line items within the capital fund to track that, to make sure that we're not spending that on anything outside of parks and recreation purposes.
Which means it doesn't push it at all.
Right.
Yeah, okay. And it's for that reason that you're recommending, staff is recommending, don't do this.
Correct.
Because of the extra work to try and track that. Okay, that's all.
Counselor Brown?
I guess this slide was my basic question, and I wasn't reading the last column correctly because I was trying to find that, I was looking at 2032, but I guess ultimately, try to help me understand why that is, that an infusion of $3 million, like, are we spending $3 million in a year all of a sudden?
Not in a year. It falls below the minimum fund balance requirement by $400,000, so it's almost pushes it at that second year, but it does fall below the minimum fund balance requirement. So we're not spending the $3 million in the year. It's just it falls below.
And when the minimum fund balance requirement specifically for the general fund?
Correct.
Okay. And then so it falls, where in 2031, how far behind the fund balance requirement are we?
In 2031, the available fund balance is 6.8 million, and the minimum fund balance requirement is 5.3. And then, so in 2032, it goes from just over $5 million as the available fund balance to the minimum fund balance requirement of being 5.4 million.
Sorry, I meant go in Exhibit A then.
Oh, in Exhibit A,
How
I'm
far
sorry.
below the fund balance requirement are we there? Must be substantial if,
In 2032, the available fund balance is just over $2 million, and the
no, I
minimum
guess it would
fund,
be, you said in 2031, you say it falls below the minimum balance by how much?
in 2031, the available fund balance is 3.8 million, and the minimum fund balance requirement is 5.3.
Okay, so it is significant, okay. And that's my only question.
Councillor Wheel.
Thank you. Can you walk me through the key assumptions underlying this?
Sure.
You know, sales tax, assessment, all the rest of it. Yeah.
The assumptions in the long-range financial plan is there's a 5% increase in property tax revenue every other year. There's a 2% increase for use tax, which is the motor vehicle use tax annually. There's a 1% increase for all the other revenue that's not property tax or use tax. And then miscellaneous revenue is 3%, with expenditures increasing annually 2%.
Okay. Yeah, I am a little surprised as well that $3 million doesn't change. Can you help me understand that a little more clearly? I'm a little fog-bound on that. $3 million infusion from the sale of 90 Mead doesn't seem to have a great deal of impact on when we start crossing lines. You know, minimums and things. What causes that?
Most likely the increase in expenditures and It's increasing in the capital fund as well as the general fund, so those expenditures are going up. And I put the $3 million in the capital fund, so it's sitting in the capital fund, which means the general fund has to supplement the capital fund less. But that's in analyzing the long-range financial plan, it's because of the expenditures, because they keep going up in both the capital fund and the general fund.
Do we have to put 90 Mead in the capital fund?
No.
Or, okay.
No, we can put the proceeds wherever we want. I just put it in the capital fund for this purpose. But it can it can just as easily go in the general fund. It can be split between the two funds. It's the preference of city council if that's what we choose to do.
But generally speaking, for one-time revenue, I think as a general practice, in broad brush strokes, one-time revenue is often put towards one-time expenditures such as a capital fund, whereas the general fund might be a more ongoing source of revenue with ongoing sources of expenditures. With that said, though, yeah, there's all sorts of freedom there, but I think for a conversation, we wanted to probably try and more accurately reflect maybe a common practice.
The model contemplates break even, not running surpluses or anything like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it does not include any surpluses. So if we were to run a surplus in 2022, it obviously would push that date back.
Right, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a history of running surpluses that are not
Yes.
trivial relative to our total budget. The excellent management, and I mean that sincerely, of the stewardship of the funds, and my compliments for that. So that's not in here. Sales tax, what have we assumed for sales tax?
So the sales tax, we assumed the amount that we're budgeting for 2022, which is 1.1 million. And then in 2023, we reduced it to not include any online sales tax. So it's only Cherry Hills Village vendors
Yeah.
and Excel.
So that's
sales
another
tax.
assumption that
Correct.
kind of, yeah. If we made a different assumption, obviously the dates would be pushed way out.
Right.
Okay, that takes care of my questions. Thank you very much.
Jessica, great job. No questions other than the numbers are clear. So I think what goes to my mind is that we're going to do something. But what I don't like is selling a piece of property. At least that's just my personal opinion. I know we will have more discussions on that. That's all.
My only thought too is we could, short of an appraisal, you could actually get a broker give you a pretty good opinion about what it is for not many money. 3 million strikes me as high.
Okay.
I don't think it's what the market. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the market's quite there yet. It's just a 2.5 acre lot. It's a R1. I think they've been sold in the Buell for $2 million.
Okay.
And that's with a lot more amenities than that. So anyway, it would be interesting to know what that would be. But I do think this is a great exercise. In the long run, it's not a lot of money. It's not going to help us out. I mean, $2 million isn't the thing. The real key here are the assumptions on sales tax, and the assumption on building materials tax, if that's a thing. I mean, that would clearly change this. But a lot of our revenue is coming from sales tax, and that whole Wayfair issue is raising its head for us. Very important.
Well, and, when was the last time we actually either broke even or came in,
As a deficit?
yeah.
It has to have been beyond 10 years, because I've been in the finance department for 10 years, and we've had a surplus all 10 years of it.
So that being said, is there an opportunity to take a closer look at the budgeted expenditures? And, I don't want to be overly ambitious with it, but it seems like it's high, because for 10 years now, we've been budgeting expenditures higher than we have, and significantly higher, not like $1,000 or something.
Right.
So it seems like that is also an assumption that would considerably change the picture as well. If we could, try to hone in and be a little more precise on, where things have actually ended up. I don't know that we want to budget that way necessarily, but this isn't a budget.
Right.
And I do think that it's worth considering it as you look towards planning the future, so.
I think, we're required to have a balanced budget, so by charter. So we have every year balanced. So all we've done in the past has been very conservative, and which is a good thing for the city, because then if there's anything that comes up, that unexpected things, we're in a little better position if we're kind of conservative in how we make those assumptions. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine with those. But those balances that brought up, they're rolled into these forecasts, because those years where we've exceeded budget, done better than budget. That's more money that's been included in the general fund that we have today, and that's helping us in the future. So I think it all works out. I'm fine with the conservative approach to the forecasts.
And just as a reminder, I think we all discussed this as a group last time we had this discussion, but to follow up on the start of the conversation about sales tax and Wayfair, the public affairs consultant is helping get us gather additional feedback and data regarding community thoughts and input. I know many of you have had a chance to meet with our consultants on that. It's our hope and desire that we utilize the council retreat, which is scheduled for February 1st. Thank you. And so, I think, and I got a lot of head nods the last time I said that. So, hopefully we have additional, financial discussions, but also, additional feedback regarding community input and checking the pulse of the community as well to help shape that conversation on the 1st. So just want to remind you of that so that you don't think that while we're talking about these, I would say, limited scope items tonight, that doesn't mean that we're pushing off to who knows when on the other issues regarding sales. Like, we absolutely are wanting to do that. We just want to get some of the more public affairs information first.
And I probably apologize to everybody for scheduling us at 5:30. We could have done it at 6, and that was my error.
Yes. However, I'll check. Just on the long-range budget forecast, we've had some conversations that have gone on much longer. We just never know, and we don't want anybody to feel pressured. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, and I think we were a little bit more conservative, just like with our budgets. We were a little bit more conservative with the time to ensure that nobody felt rushed. Just if we are going to move on, just to make sure, it was suggested, though, that we get a broker's thought without necessarily having to spend real dollars on a formal appraisal. Is that something that folks would be interested in?
I think we have enough brokers in this community. We don't have to do that.
And in a lot of ways, brokers have a better sense for the present value. Appraisals will tell you what happened in the past.
Yeah.
I find that some good real estate brokers have a better sense for what it.
And are you hoping to bring that back for an additional discussion, or you just want us to provide that information to you in like an update?
I think it'd be nice to have an update.
I mean, I think that clearly it's not going to make an enormous difference. And so the decision about 90 Mead Lane then isn't really driven by this as much as it is, we have 2.5 acres of very valuable property in Cherry Hills Village just sitting there. And it could be serving the community in a better way, whether that's a park or as funds to do something else we want to do, like Quincy Farm, or whether it could be doing more for the community than just sitting there. And so that is, I guess at some point we need to have a discussion, and I feel like it's come up for many different councils, and we always, we need to talk about what to do with 90 Mead Lane, and we haven't quite done it yet. And maybe it's an opportunity, for this council to really study that. Values are at a peak, so if cash is how we feel it best serves this community, this would be a good time. If we don't think that's how it best serves the community, then it gets added into the master plan or whatever, but.
But to your point, it's less solely a financial discussion and more broadly a policy discussion.
And we have the master plan on now. I mean, it's something they could put on your
Well,
agenda.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilor.
I certainly agree with Katie's point that it's a question of highest and best use for the community of the investment. And I don't see it benefiting the community. It may be the world's most expensive tree farm, I don't know. But no, I mean, there are a lot of other uses that I think would be more exciting. And I'm still having trouble, to be honest with you, about, and maybe I just need to have a little quality time with Jessica to understand this, because it's like, even if we don't get 3 million and we have real estate commissions and so on and so forth, we're still talking about 30-40% of our annual budget. And how that doesn't translate into much of an impact is escaping me at the moment.
That's not 30% of the annual budget.
Well,
I mean, annual budget.
Well, Randy, I think if you look at it and look at the numbers, they're so far below that 3 million is not going to make a big difference. If you track it all the way out from starting in this year, the biggest difference is what we got budgeted, and it's something we got to talk to the consultant about, is the sales tax, obviously, because if you look at 2021, we're talking about $1.7 million of revenue, and going forward, I think Jessica's
exactly. I mean,
she's budgeted $1 million less.
Right.
You take $1 million over 10 years, it makes a big
There are-
difference.
You can get $1 million from Amazon in just a couple of years. right?
Exactly.
So it makes
Right.
one meter lane look insignificant.
Yep. I mean, there are a bunch of very conservative assumptions, and I think it's important for us not to, well, it's important for us to look at a worst-case scenario, but it's also important for us to think in realistic terms as well, and what's most probable. So, yeah. And regardless, it's still, an asset that really isn't producing much for the community. Yeah, well, okay, that's all I have.
I second that.
I think I agree with you. And another, since we have a little bit of time here, one other thing that was brought up was, in my discussion with Jessica, was separating the capital fund and the general fund. Right now, that creates some, gyrations for us to do things that we don't necessarily need to do. I mean, I was on council when we separated them and created it. I wasn't all persuaded at the time it was necessary. I can understand it, and if we were a bigger organization or enterprise, it made sense. But really, the capital fund and the general fund, you could have a sub-fund under the general fund for capital expenditures. And then it wouldn't require kind of the gyrations that Jessica has to go through to balance and send money to the capital fund and the general fund. It just seems like a simpler way to do it. I mean, it's not serving any great purpose having it a separate line item. I mean, and if staff tells me, it's easier and I don't, just do that and there's no point in it, it's something we might think about. I would think about anyway, about making it easy, making your life easier.
Seeing that we've got the time, Jessica, I guess this is a more general question for council. In 2002, we had this vote, the South Suburban vote, and to Al's point, there are 3 advisory questions on here. The question, here we're going through a master plan revision at this time. This is important stuff for the master plan people to see, because it was voted, it was affirmed, and it certainly runs, not necessarily the last one, but certainly the first 2, improving the trails and purchasing open space is, consistent with the current master plan. And I guess my point is, thank you for including this. It's helpful, and our community did affirm that, 10 years ago.
Even more than that, I don't think it would have passed without all of those 3 things being on there. Okay, I think that there are different reasons people voted for that, for getting out of South Suburban. It was a close vote as it was.
Yeah.
I don't think if we didn't have all 3 of those on there saying, here's how we envision the money, not binding us, but here's how the council envisions the money being spent. I have serious doubts it would have passed without all 3 on there.
It was a good sales job, and I think that's something meeting with going forward on what we're looking at for next year. How this was done was very well done.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Also, just making sure that staff is not getting any direction on moving the 1 mil.
Yeah, I think we're
think
all,
your memo
you're right on,
kinda
you're right
summed
on
that
about
up.
it. It's very clear. Yep, absolutely. It's restricted, so anyway, why do it? It's just, makes it more complicated. Yep. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we can take a recess until 6:30, and I apologize, everybody, for,
Well, in your defense, if that had been on here, maybe the discussion.
yeah, Dan with a half hour for Counselor Sheldon. We forgot about that. All right, thanks. We'll reconvene at 6:30, sorry. Okay. I would call to order the meeting of the, it's 6:30. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Cherry Hills Village City Council. It's Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Roll call of members, please, Laura.
Counselor Safavi?
Here.
Counselor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Counselor Brown?
Here.
Counselor Gallagher?
Here.
Counselor Sheldon is absent. Counselor Blum?
Here.
If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is a presentation from the American Public Works Association.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have the pleasure of introducing Renee Railsback. She's here tonight representing the Board of Directors for the Colorado chapter of the APWA.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Renee Railsback, and I am the immediate past president of the Colorado chapter of the American Public Works Association. I'm honored to be here this evening to present Cherry Hills Village with their awards. One of the positives that resulted from the recent health pandemic was that it became an opportunity to challenge our previous preconceptions of how public works services can and should be delivered. The American Public Works Association Awards Program recognizes outstanding individuals and agencies representing the best in public works. 2021 was Colorado APWA's 36th year of celebrating this for our industry. It was an honor to participate in the reward process again this year and to be able to recognize the out-of-the-box thinking exhibited throughout all the great projects we received this year. The Highline Canal Trail Connection Hamden Underpass. Award success for the Highline Canal Trail Connection was realized through exceptional performance beyond the traditional expectations of the system and the application of innovative construction methods. This project was recognized for streamlining standard practices to preserve and enhance this invaluable resource while improving safety and critical connections. Reviewers were impressed with your collaborative partnerships and creative financing solution. This project won in our Parks and Trails Small Agency category. The John Mead Park Project is commended for creating a healthier habitat through holistic enhancements, combining educational opportunities within improvements to water quality, wildlife habitat, floodplain capacity, and park recreational amenities. My favorite part about this project was the creative public outreach efforts through updates from Max the Muskrat. The John Mead Park Project and Allen Hutto Memorial Commons was a well thought out connection between users and the natural environment. A well deserving of our highest award, receiving the coveted 2021 Project of the Year. Thank you very much.
Renee, thanks for taking the time out to come visit us. We appreciate it. We have one more award. It is an honor to be in front of you tonight to recognize Ralph Mason, who was awarded Manager of the Year for Administrative Management by the Colorado chapter of the American Public Works Association. The Professional Manager of the Year Award in Administrative Management seeks to recognize outstanding achievement in the area of administration within the public works field, and to inspire excellence and dedication in the public sector by recognizing the outstanding career achievements of an administrative professional. During his service with the city, Ralph has worked in many different capacities, including equipment operator, heavy equipment operator, crew chief, street superintendent, and currently the project and right-of-way manager. I think he even did a stint as interim public works director once too. The one big thing that Ralph has always been, no matter what his position in the city, is an ambassador. Ralph has always been the #1 salesman by reflecting a positive image and working cooperatively with the residents. He's established a trust with the villagers that is based on honesty and respect. After all these years, Ralph is still as enthusiastic and optimistic as he was the day he was hired. I'd like to express the gratitude we have for the incredible dedication and loyalty that Ralph Mason has shown to the city of Cherry Hills Village for over 39 years now. Ralph, thanks again for your service and congratulations.
Thank you, Ralph, for that. All of your years of service, really appreciate it. We're very grateful from all of our citizens for what you've done. Thank you very much. Next, we have audience participation period. Is there anybody signed up? No sign-ups. All right, we'll pass on that. Next, reports from city boards, commissions, or committees. Any? All right. Next, consent agenda items. 7. I think there's a request to remove 1. Councilor Blum? 7A was removed. We have a motion on 7B.
I move to approve consent agenda item 7B.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes. 7A is taken off because obviously Mr. Councilor Blum was not in attendance at that meeting.
Yeah, I think Randy and I, neither one of us were here, so.
Correct.
Okay, so then I move approval of consent agenda item 7A.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
If we have 3 votes, we'll figure out if that's going to do it for us.
I
Okay.
assume you abstain, is that?
Next, unfinished business, item 9. 9A is a public hearing, Council Bill 11, Series 2021, vacating the city's interest, if any, in certain bridle path easements located on Track 6 of Canada 2 Plat and Lot 3 of the Lake Canada 2 Plat. And this is a second and final reading. And we have a request to go into executive session on our agenda.
I move to go into executive session under Section 24-6-4024B, Colorado Revised Statutes, to receive legal advice on specific legal questions regarding the petition to vacate the city's interest, if any, in the bridle path easements on 2 and 4 Canito Lane.
Second?
Motion is second. Do we need a roll call? Is that right, Laura?
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
Thank you. Then we will briefly retire to executive session. All in the audience, shouldn't be too long if you'd like to. Are we ready? All right, the time is now 7:27, and the executive session that has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were Councilor Savavi, Councilor Wheel, Councilor Brown, Councilor Gallagher, Councilor Blum, City Manager, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Goldie, and Ms. Black, and the City Attorney, of course. Can't forget her, Ms. Guggenberger. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the Open Meetings Law, I ask that you state your concerns for the record. Hearing none, we'll continue with the meeting. All right, I think we're moving on to presentation from staff.
Yes.
Mr. Goldie.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and members of City Council. Before you this evening on second and final hearing, as well as the public hearing, is a request from the Theory O'Leary Living Trust for the vacation of the city's interest, if any, in the bridle paths on 2 and 4 Canito. City Council considered the preliminary petition for vacation of these easements depicted on the plats of 2 and 4 Canito Lane at the regular August 18th, 2020 council meeting. At that meeting, council determined that the preliminary petition possessed sufficient merit to justify further consideration and authorized the further processing of a formal petition for vacation. On April 8th, 2021, PTRC held a public meeting considering this request. The Parks and Trails Commission made a recommendation to deny the request. On October 12th, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission made a recommendation to approve the request. The applicant is seeking formalized vacation of the city's interest, if any, in these easements in an effort to remove any encumbrances that may create ambiguity on the title of these properties. The city has never maintained or improved these bridle paths and has not placed them on parks and trails maps. The trails are currently inaccessible due to geography and lack of connectivity. There are other alternate trails that exist in the vicinity that provide access from Holly Street to the Highline Canal. Staff is recommending that City Council approve the vacation of the city's interest, if any, in the bridle path easements on 2 and 4 Canito Lane. Staff is available to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Any questions for staff before we start the public hearing? Councilor Blum? Councilor Gallagher?
No.
Councilor Brown? Councilor Will? Councilor Savati?
Nope.
All right, we will, 7:30.
The applicant is available for questions if council has any
Yes, I
questions.
want to give the applicant a chance to present if they wish at all before we have a public hearing. Yeah, you're just available to answer questions? That'd be fine. That's perfectly fine. All right, I have 2 signups to speak. Let's open the public. It's 7:30. I'll open the public hearing. First, Tori Leventon, 3901 East Quincy Avenue.
Mr. Levinson had to leave and has asked me to. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Robert Eber. Mr. Leviton has had to leave and asked me to either take over his comments or just add them to my comments, and I'm also on your speakers list.
Thank you. You're next on the list, so Mr. Eber, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Robert Eber. I live at 3 Middle Road. I will do my best to stay to the 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, excuse me. Please excuse my directness to you. I have lots to say in a short time to do so. Sure. Let me start by saying that the city authority to vacate property only exists where you have a public interest. Obviously, you cannot take over and vacate my private property rights. If there is no public interest in the property, the city is without jurisdiction, in my opinion, to, let me take a step back and tell you that as a PTRC commissioner, I provided a great deal of comments. The comments that I'm giving to you tonight are my personal comments and not on behalf of PTRC. I want to make sure that you understand that, and I'm free to answer any questions that you have. I don't believe you have the legal right to be looking at this tonight. The city authority to vacate only covers platted and designated public spaces. If you look at the ordinance, it talks about that the right-of-way includes any platted or designated public street. The word public then goes into street, alley, lane, parkway, avenue, road, easement, and then says, or any other public way. Right now, applicant has not acknowledged that there is a public interest here. And without that authority, you cannot look at this petition. You cannot vacate what you do not have until this petitioner or property owner acknowledges that there is a public interest in this property. You have no authority to look at this petition to vacate, because there's nothing to vacate. Vacation is only over public property. If they don't acknowledge that there is a public interest here, you do not have any authority under our ordinance or under the state law. Again, the petitioner does not concede there is any public nature. They've just covered themselves by saying, if any. You don't get to have contingent arguments that bring in authority to look at something if there's not an acknowledgement here. The proper means for this would have and should be a quiet title action. A quiet title action is exactly to resolve the uncertainty over the title here. It doesn't matter whether or not there's a public interest. If there is, it'll find it. If there isn't, you still go forward with a quiet title action. They should have done that other than using a citizen advisory board, citizen member of P&Z, and now a citizen elected council. This should be before a judge. It's a legal question. Was there proper acceptance of this property? Was there proper dedication and acceptance? And is there a legal interest? It calls for a legal question. A quiet title action is the way to go. It's not that there's an alternative process. Without the authority of it being a public acknowledgement of a public property, you don't have jurisdiction. Secondly, I'd like to tell you that the vacation is contrary to the city's master plan mandates. The master plan clearly tells us to protect, preserve, expand trails, and add trails where it's in the city's interest to do so. I work with on behalf of PTRC, and I have a very good relationship with staff, and I think staff just missed it on this one in terms of the public interest in the staff recommendation. The north trail from Holly to the canal along Pond Road is not the legal certainty trail that you think it is. On the far western slope, just east of Dahlia Street, where it is on Tenaya Lane, is not a legally guaranteed pathway to the Highline Canal. Therefore, we don't have the access that we think we would like to have. The current west edge of Tenaya Lane is with the permission of the landowner, and the southern route along the trail from Holly to Fairfax requires access only from the southern end and then awkwardly winds north and then west before accessing the trail. There is great connectivity. If you look at the map that's on the screen, there is direct connectivity along Union Avenue and straight across to the existing bridge. It is an important connection for all those people in South Mar Vista, Charlou, and Charlou-Chamont that have no trails in their neighborhoods and no access to the trails right now. I see I'm getting to only 20 seconds left. I would ask your discretion for a few more minutes, if I may. My limited polling before PTRC reviewed it indicated a unanimous desire to see a direct trail to the canal. The argument has been raised by applicant that they need additional condemnation because the trail wouldn't even go all the way to Union Avenue. My comment to you is that's easy to do because there is such a short distance and it's already a public street that it need to be added, that condemnation to add the additional use is insignificant. Finally, I want to tell you that the Maven litigation that applicant seems to rely on in their argument that this is not public, is not precedent for this. It's not binding authority. There is a different outcome that is possible and distinguishable facts. And the most important distinguishable fact that I want to raise to you is the Lake Canada plat map. And that map specifically says in the far right-hand side, and I don't know if you can bring it up on your screen, but I have my version that's here before you. And it's not just looking at the one, but specifically where you see the certification of dedication and ownership regarding lots 2 and 3 of Lake Canada. Quote, it says, the undersigned hereby further dedicate to the public all utility easements and dedicate to the city of Cherry Hills Village all bridle path easements as shown in said path. There is a clear dedication to the public, to the village. Now, there is some uncertainty because in the city approval, applicant would probably tell you that the city approval says all we accepted was the utility easements. However, there's internal conflict within this document, and there is a legal argument that conflicting interpretations on the same document are read against the drafter. I'm not telling you it's a slam dunk. I'm telling you it's worth fighting for the trails for the village. I'm telling you that the legal arguments that were made at Maven are entirely differently. And as a result, you cannot use that as precedent. You have to go to battle and be willing to fight. The common law dedication principles also are against this. I personally grew up in the neighborhood with not a single sign to be seen in that neighborhood. I used to ride my bikes. I did not live in Canada. I used those trails. My sister rode horses. It was commonly used by anybody and everybody without any understanding that those were internally private. The argument that the city hasn't used them or maintained them is also not persuasive or should not be persuasive to you. As you know, these were long held by South Suburban, And as a result of that, the contract with South Suburban specifically prohibited us from using those. This is a direct link, as you see on your own map and your own chart up there. It's a straight shot from Union Avenue along 586 feet of the area on the south of the issue. In exchange, there is approximately 1,900 feet that is being asked to be vacated. In the Maven litigation, each party faced litigation risk of the continued proceeding, and it resulted in a negotiated settlement. Yes, the trail work that we're talking about here would need some time, energy, and money. That's exactly what the master plan and the citizens of the city have told us that we should be doing. This is an important link. It provides direct access. And I am quite honestly a little bit surprised that there hasn't been some negotiated resolution to give up 3 in exchange for 1 area that is important. It's already used it's not like there's going to be 0 to everybody now using this pathway. There already are easements along this bridle path. This is just the incremental use that allows it to be to the rest of the public trail system. The way I calculate it, that if you do go forward and act upon this, you still have the ability to make a finding that there is an interest that deserves compensation regardless. I look at this as approximately 1,900 linear feet that's being eliminated from our trail system. Approximately a 15-foot width is approximately a half an acre at $1 million an acre. You should ask for $500,000 in consideration from this property owner, let alone the vacating the north-south line down the middle adds far more than $500,000 to the assembled piece of property that this property owner has. In conclusion, the matter is distinguishable from the Maven matter, and more importantly, I don't think you have authority to even entertain this petition to vacate. The parties, both sides, have litigation risk. The city must stand up for its property rights. The same way I expect an individual property owner like Mr. Theory and Mrs. O'Leary to stand up for their property rights. We cannot send a signal that disputes automatically are walked away from. The city master plan has told us, fight for trails and expand them where possible. The city should fight and spend money to protect them and send a message that public uses are critical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eber. Appreciate your comments and service on PTRC. I'll let anybody else who wants to speak. Now is a public hearing, or forever hold your peace. See no one else interested in speaking. I'll close the public hearing at 7:42. All right. What's the pleasure of council? Any further discussion? Any motions? If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve on second and final reading Council Bill 11, Series 2021, vacating the city's interest, if any, in certain bridle path easements located on Track 6 of the Cantato Plat and Lot 3 of the Lake Cantato Plat, all located within the city of Cherry Hills Village, Arapahoe County, Colorado.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this is just a voice,
Roll call.
just a voice vote, right?
Roll call.
I'm sorry, Laura?
Roll call.
But I
Because it's a council bill.
Is it a roll call?
but I
Okay,
have
sorry.
some discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you bet. Councilor Brown.
If no one else, normally we just kind of start down the line, but anybody else first? No, okay. So I guess I would just like to say, and I don't think this would come as a surprise to anyone, that I see my job on city council to protect the interests of the people of Cherry Hills Village. And the people of Cherry Hills Village have said repeatedly, in no uncertain terms, that parks, trails, and open space are one of the defining aspects of our community and are a top priority for this city. It's in the master plan. It finds its way into almost every conversation we have. And as I have said before, and will say again, that I personally cannot, in good conscience, vote to vacate trails or open space, period. That's exactly what I said in August of 2020 when this application was first brought forth, and I voted no to continue the process. There's a lot of information in this application. There's a lot of legal data. There's a lot of talk about whether the trails are used or not used or maintained or not maintained. And I would argue that really none of that is relevant. In a vacation process, the only relevant question to vacation is whether the requested vacation is in the best interest of the people of Cherry Hills Village. A lot of people say the city, but that makes it too easy to separate the city. The city is the people. So I would have to argue that vacation of public property, particularly in return for nothing, is never in the best interest of the people. In this particular request, the public doesn't benefit from this vacation at all. The only interest served here is the interest of the property owner. I will acknowledge that this process has raised some legitimate questions about whether or not the city has any interest in these trails, but the fact is we don't know. It has raised questions, it has not answered them. And in fact, one would argue that if they're so certain that there's no public interest in these trails, then a vacation isn't even necessary. So if they're not public trails, then the city has no reason, or I guess as we've been told by Mr. Ebert, not even the authority or standing to vacate them. We can't give away something we don't have. And if they are public trails, then I believe personally that we should absolutely not vacate them. So either way, I can't vote for vacation. I agree that this is a legal question and that the legal question of whether these are public trails or not cannot and will not be addressed through this process. I agree that the proper process should have been a quiet title action. And you might ask, what's the difference? If the outcome is the same, what's the difference? Well, I'll tell you what the difference is to me. In this case, I am being asked to take action against the interests of the people that I represent in favor of an individual property owner. In the other process, the applicant would be taking action against the city, against neighbors, against the community, and to me, that's a big difference. In this case, I think we and our commissions are set up to be the bad guys. And in the other process, the applicant is the bad guy. And that's a big difference. So I cannot in good conscience support this application.
Any other comments from council? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call. Laura?
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
No?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
That takes 4. That's all that's required to be enacted, and the measure passes. Is enacted. Congratulations to the landowners, and there's the petition has been granted. Next up, item 9B, Council Bill 12, Section 2021, amending Chapter 11, Article 3 concerning city property, parks, and rights-of-way. This is our second and final reading.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This is before you for second reading. It was approved on first reading on November 2nd at the last meeting. So the only change from the first reading to this item is bringing the word table back into this section, meaning effectively everything will remain the same going forward in terms of for a table to be set up in a park or somewhere on a trail, whoever is doing that will need to obtain a permit from the city manager. But that is the only change from first reading since you've seen it last. Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Councilor Blum?
No questions.
Councilor Gallagher?
No questions.
Councilor Brown? Nope. Councilor Will?
No questions.
Councilor Shavabi?
No questions.
All right. I'll entertain a motion. If there are no other questions for staff and no discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Yep.
Council, let's see, I move to approve on second and final reading Council Bill 12, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance, City of Cherry Hills Village, amending Chapter 11, Article 3 concerning city property, parks, and right-of-way.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, this will take a roll call too.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes?
Counselor Brown?
No?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes as well. Next, item 9C, public hearing, Council Bill 13, Series 2021, authorizing the renewal of existing cable franchise agreement held by Comcast of Colorado and amending Chapter 5, Article I of the Municipal Code. So this is a second and final reading as well.
I'll present, Mayor, if that's all right. This second reading on this franchise agreement, it's proposing a renewal of the franchise with Comcast. Just for your information, we have with us tonight Colleen McCruskey from Ken Fellman's firm, who helped advise us through this process of negotiating this agreement, as well as Nick Jimenez, who's from Comcast. So if you do have questions, they're available for that. I mentioned last time when we set this up for second reading that I would talk about a few key points of this agreement. So the agreement is a 10-year term, and it would take effect on December 5th and terminate 10 years later unless terminated sooner pursuant to the agreement. And that falls in line with the city's charter, which prohibits franchise grants for longer than 20 years. The franchise fee payment is the same, 5%, and that's the maximum permitted under federal law. And then the significant changes from the last agreement were some modifications made to Section 1014 and Section 1022. And these are spelled out in your memo, but just for purposes of public understanding and discussion. So we've had some work with undergrounding lines here in the city, and this addresses issues that pertain to that, whether it's a requested underground, need to move, an installation, et cetera. And specifically, if Comcast is legally required to place its system underground, they will bear all associated costs. If other above-ground utilities are installed or placed underground around Comcast lines, then Comcast shall also underground its lines I'm sorry, I should have water, at its expense unless funding is available from sources other than the city. And that's a clarification that was added so that the sources are not the city. That was a bit of an ambiguity that was clarified. And then if the city requires Comcast to relocate facilities on city property or right-of-way, which does happen from time to time, Comcast also will bear those relocation costs. They can take advantage of any other city funds that are available so long as those are not city funds. So it really does clarify and eliminate the city from bearing any of those expenses on any of those lines going underground. So also harking back to the last time we talked about this agreement in any detail, the city does not provide for any public education or government access channels or PEG channels, which substantially simplifies this arrangement. And the agreement reflects that. And also the agreement incorporates updated model customer service standards negotiated by the Colorado Communications and Utility Alliance, which Ms. McCruskey also works with, and they're pretty standard, I understand it, with all the jurisdictions that Comcast does business with. So it provides an ability for the city to oversee consumer issues if and as they arise. And we're available for any questions.
Great. Any questions for our city attorney? Councilor Plum?
No, I just have a question. This 5% fee we get, do we have any estimate of what we get on that, Jessica, annually?
We budget $140,000. It looks like in 2020 we received $151,000, and 2019 was $148,000.
Councilor Gallagher?
No question.
Councilor Brown?
No questions.
Councilor Wheel?
No questions?
Councilor Safavi?
No questions.
Thank you very much. I did want to thank the representatives for coming tonight and also in agreeing to negotiate some of those points that were ambiguous and in the contract. And thank you for being flexible and speaking with us and talking with us through and negotiating with our city attorney. I appreciate that very much. All right, if there's no other comments oh wait, we have to open a public hearing. I'm sorry, it is 7:54. I'll open a public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this matter. No one has signed up. So at 7:54, I will close the public hearing, seeing no interest in speaking. And therefore, we're on course for a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill 13, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, authorizing the renewal of the existing cable franchise agreement held by Comcast of Colorado 9 LLC, locally known as Comcast, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute on behalf of the City of Cherry Hills Village the cable franchise agreement, and amending Chapter 5, Article 1 of the Cherry Hills Village Municipal Code on second and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Roll call on this as well.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Okay, that passes as well. Moving on to new business agenda item 10, public hearing 2022 proposed budget. There are three separate items, and we need a public hearing on this. I assume you want to probably speak to all of them at once.
Yes, three separate items, one presentation.
One presentation would be terrific. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Before you tonight for discussion and public hearing is the proposed budget for 2022. One assumption remaining in the proposed budget is property tax revenue. Staff has estimated property tax revenue based on initial assessed values from Arapahoe County. The final assessed property values will be provided by the county in time for second and final reading in December. There have been a few changes to the budget since the study session was held in October. The first adjustment was the health insurance premium. Staff originally included a 7.5% health insurance increase and a 5% increase to the dental insurance. The health insurance premium increased an average of 1.6%, and the dental premium increased 5%. Because of this change, staff was able to adjust the eligible employee merit increase from 0.5% to 1.5%. Staff was also able to increase the annual employee tuition reimbursement to a maximum of $10,000 per employee per request. Included in the proposed budget is also the $50 gold membership for the Transportation Solutions Arapahoe County organization, per Mayor Pro Tem Brown's request at the last City Council meeting. Based on discussion held at the study session, the at-grade improvements for Quincy Avenue and Colorado Boulevard were removed from the proposed capital fund budget. The proposed 2022 budget is a balanced budget with revenues and expenditures totaling $7,618,877, and the projected ending fund balance for the general fund at the end of 2022 is just over $13 million. The total proposed increase for all staff will be up to 3%, which includes both merit and cost of living. In preparation for a potential retirement announcement, staff had originally included $12,000 in the proposed 2022 budget for recruitment services, so no adjustment was necessary to cover the recruitment fees. However, the RFP submittal deadline is Friday, so staff will have a better idea of the recruitment fees at that time and can make adjustments in time for second and final reading in December. Again, the only change to the proposed capital fund expenditures was the removal of the at-grade improvements at Quincy Avenue and Colorado Boulevard. Similar changes were made to the proposed budget for the Parks and Recreation Fund. Eligible employee merit increases were adjusted from 0.5% to 1.5% because of the reduced health insurance premiums. And annual employee tuition reimbursement requests were also increased to the maximum of $10,000 per employee per request. There were no changes to the smaller funds. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions, Councilor Blum?
No questions, but I do want to commend Jessica again for an outstanding presentation. We appreciate it.
Councilor Gallagher.
Yes, Jessica, thank you very much. Good job. clarify to us, as Quincy Farm is front and center on our community's radar screen, we are adding an additional, is it 30,000?
We have $30,000 in weed mitigation for that contract in the Parks and Recreation Fund. And then we've added additional general maintenance to the Cat Anderson Fund. So that's $55,000 total in the Cat Anderson Fund.
That was not there.
We increased it.
Yeah.
It was there before, we just increased it, but the weed mitigation contract was not included in John Mead or in the Parks and Rec Fund before.
So as we go through an MOU with the land preserve and come to an agreement and have an annual plan in place, is there, if there are items that are important to the village and would be, that makes sense to our city council, we at a later date may amend that
Correct.
budget to activate or funds into
That is
a
correct.
particular project.
There's a process in place for that. So when the plan is presented and if it makes sense to council and it's something council wants to move forward with, we could present a supplemental appropriation whenever council desires. So there is a plan for that to adjust the budget.
And then there, not in 2022, but in 2023, in the Cat Anderson Fund, that fund is going to see a lot of money, right? And that's, can you explain that?
We have placeholder amounts starting in 2023 for Quincy Farm. It's $1.5 million that's been broken up over a 3-year period. So it starts in 2023 and then 2024, 2025. So it's just the placeholder that we've put there.
So obviously, no, we're not committing to spend the money. It's simply, as you describe, a placeholder.
Correct. No commitment, no guarantee that it'll be spent. It's just there as a placeholder to see the effects on the budget or the long-range financial plan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
My only question is, wherever did you find $75 to?
It was really hard to find the $50 for that.
Thank you for doing that. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, and we were also delighted, based on the study session conversation, to be able to supplement because of the health insurance premium results. That was most of the discussion last time, if you recall, about pay increases and also the tuition reimbursement. And so as a result, that was top of our list. We were very happy to do that as well. So,
Thank you for that.
Councilor Wheel.
Excellent job, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Savabi.
Well, thank you for putting that together. Look, I'm looking at the numbers for staff increase. And the question that comes up is around inflation. You know, we are having, I mean, depending on the report that you look at, anywhere from 3.5%, 5%, I don't know. You look at the report, but we are having inflation. And I don't know how we're going to do this, but I'd like for us to consider if we can look at the merit increase or the increase we're giving to the staff and see if we can even adjust that a little bit more. In my opinion, the increase that we're providing, it doesn't even include the inflation that we're seeing. So everybody's, of course, dealing with that in every, we're all facing with that. So I don't know, I'd like to almost propose that what we have is a default, but maybe if we can look at the budget one more time and see if we can find some more fund that we can even see if we can push that increase a little bit more. I don't want to put a percentage on it at this point because we just got to see what we have.
That's interesting because I had the same thought, the same concern. I think it's citywide metropolitan, or 3.5, I think, is what a lot of municipalities are doing for cost of living. And I'm there, look at that. Somebody's reading my mind.
Just in case.
I have a real concern with, if we don't give match cost of living is basically a decrease to our staff, right. And I don't like that. I'd like to see if there's a way, and you can speak to it. This is only first reading, but I'd like to make. I think our staff does a great job, and I think the least we could do is give them the cost of living to make sure that they're keeping up and we're not giving them a cut. And then obviously merit on top of that. But I like your thinking about that too, and see if that is possible to come back and do that.
Let me just add a couple of thoughts. We've spent a great deal of time thinking about this as well, hence we happen to have slides like this at the ready. We didn't really even accumulate this for the purposes of showing you tonight. We're deeply concerned about this as well. And I will tell you, our leadership team and our directors, retention and recruitment are really made challenging by a lot of these issues. Mr. Goldie can attest to some of the challenges we're having at filling some vacant positions. And, having a total of 3% cost of living and merit doesn't help our cause. It makes it hard. So we're extremely concerned about it as well. Just know, though, if you recall back to the study session, to get to the 3%, we are not in the same financial situation that a lot of other jurisdictions are. And we actually had to go through and scrub and remove a number of requested projects, a number of expenditures that we've had in years past in our general fund that we had to cut. And so we've already given this a once over. What we can do, and I'm looking at my staff here, we can certainly go through and see if we can find some additional spots. I would offer to council, if you had a chance to scan the budget and there's something that you don't think is a big priority, this is really a conversation about priorities.
Yep.
And we're doing our best to match your priorities. If there's something that we're providing some funding for that you don't think is as big of a priority as some of these staffing considerations, we certainly would welcome that sort of additional feedback for us so that we can meet your needs.
And we take this up again in December, right?
We do.
I think this is a good opportunity for everybody to think about it and then get back to staff. And it's possible we can cover it in December with alternatives, A, B, and C, or some options if we want to.
I would just ask, if council does do their homework and finds an area or two, please give us a call ahead of time so that we can be prepared, because we are obligated to approve second reading in December. So we don't want to be scrambling trying to understand and arrive at a balanced budget by hearing about
and we don't want to
proposal last minute.
We don't want to propose a cut that we're obligated by contract or something to do, or something like that. I mean, that we can't. So it needs to be ahead of time, well before the packets go out for the December. As soon as possible, basically. I'm very concerned about it. And Jay, too, I'm interested more in your difficulties, but I know we had summer seasonal help. We couldn't get it, and I think, now you're $15 an hour minimum in Denver. I don't know what you're paying or what you're looking at, but those are real challenges. And I don't know, had you planned, Jay? What did you plan for seasonal?
We planned $16 an hour next year. Yeah, that's what we went up to.
Yep, that's right. And Jessica, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, if you could if there's budget process and deadlines and things like that, you're more of an expert than I am. So I just want to make sure that you have had an opportunity to help shape this conversation, especially as it relates to process.
The packets will be due December 1st, so we'll just need any suggestions you might have prior to that. I would say maybe that Monday, which would be the 29th, that'll give me time to actually prepare the budget and memo and all of that for the packets.
Correct.
And we'll take a look as well. I mean, I'm not sort of punting on this. We will absolutely do some evaluation as well to see where else we can find.
So along those lines, two quick questions then. What percentage do you think we need to get to cover inflation and merit? And then, how many dollars are we looking to find?
Yep.
Based on our evaluation, I think a fair argument can be made. I've heard that a lot tonight. I think a fair argument can be made that if we could get to a total of 4%, we would be keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. We would be remaining more competitive. Is that a fair statement, staff, based on some of our discussions?
So what is a 4% dollar-wise? Yeah, what's the dollar-wise?
Dollar-wise, probably it depends if we're doing merit versus cost of living. If we do cost of living, everybody gets it. If we do merit, then only the eligible employees would give it. So cost of living would be probably about $50,000.
Yeah.
So if we look for $50,000, we can
Yeah.
get to that point?
Did you see that movie Dave where he's the president? Oh, yeah. We just got to cut out the ads to convince people to feel better about the car they've already purchased.
All right, I think you have general consensus from council about, as I'm seeing nodding heads about where we'd like to see and making sure
So a
that we're.
total of 4%?
Well,
including-
yeah, I think that if we can look at that and see
Okay.
if we can get there, I think
Okay.
you're getting some nodding heads around here. Yeah. And obviously, this is going to be an issue for us going forward. I can't imagine what's going to be sitting here next year, what the inflation rate is going to be. And, obviously, our home values are going up, but it's always offset by, obviously, costs and everything else. So all of that tends to be a wash in the big picture. All right. Any other questions then for staff?
I guess related to that, Chris, what's it going to take to maintain? We've got outstanding staff. What number's going to make us really competitive so that we can hire and maintain? Do we need to be at 6 points? $50,000 in the scope of the entire budget is not a big number. That's a point. And this is about people. This is what matters. So give us a number is it 6 points where we go, where Jay can go with confidence and hire a new parks person and say, hey, I'm more than in parity with the competition?
Well, I would offer to you that there's a lot of variables there, and the percent increase is just one of the variables. Our average salary is, in some ways, what we post as far as the pay range on a job opening is probably a bigger number for a potential employee that they start with that number. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, we do a survey, and I think our numbers from that point are really competitive. So we're not behind the 8 ball all the way around. I don't want to paint too drastic of a picture here. I'm concerned about cost of living and merit increases. Over time, if that stays below sort of keeping up with the Joneses, then we start falling behind, and that's when it becomes an issue. A year where we're dealing with some unusual budget circumstances, like the legislature affecting property tax revenue, for example. A year by itself, I'm a little less concerned about. I think I'm more concerned about the cost of living and merit increases as it relates to retention, making sure that the employees that we have want to continue to stay working here. We have a lot of advantages that go beyond just the salary, but make no mistake, people pay attention to their salary. So that's really where I'm concerned, is really our retention side of things.
I'm sorry. Good.
I agree with Chris, and I would add, too, that CML is a great resource for this. So if we're concerned about where we're sitting as far as, they have terrific numbers because they do surveys, and and I'm happy to kind of share them with you, but they do surveys, obviously, city managers, everybody else. I mean, all these positions. So, and I've looked at them, and we're in pretty good shape. But I agree with Chris, it is the cost of living, because if we don't match the inflation rate, we're getting a cut to people. That's not fair, and we can't do that. We can't ask our staff to do a great job and be taking a cut every year. So.
Chris, what was the decision on health insurance and the contribution by the employer versus the employee? Was that modified?
We continued the same, we proposed the same approach that the city has used in the past, whereby the city covers the entire increase amount. Mm-hmm. Now, private employers have not necessarily been following that model for a while now, and some local jurisdictions are starting to follow suit. This year, it worked out very well. In some past years, with the amounts of increases that we've seen, it's not sustainable forever. It's just not. And so at some point, we're going to have some really tough decisions as it relates to health insurance increases. I don't think this year is the year. But I think long-term, city council and staff, we're going to have to think about a more sustainable plan long-term.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
to you.
That makes sense. Well, I'm glad we got a good result this year.
All right, now, Laura, I think we can open the public hearing. No signups? All right, I'm going to open the public hearing at 8:13, and seeing no public signups or no audience members seeking to speak, I will close the public hearing at 8:14, it just turned over. And we are ready for a discussion or a motion. I'll entertain a motion. Well, that's silly. We have to take these one at a time.
Yep.
So,
Now, I'm
each
happy to
3
make the motion, but I only see 2 here. I thought we were supposed to have 3.
No, there's
two.
just
Okay.
2.
Sorry.
One of the attachments is the budget.
Got it. Okay. I move to approve Council Bill 14, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance adopting a budget and levying property taxes for the city of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado for fiscal year 2022 on first reading.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Laura?
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Will?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
And then I move to approve Council Bill 15, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, authorizing appropriations for fiscal year 2022 on first reading.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Roll call, please.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Will?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
Next item is Agenda Item 10B, Council Bill 16, Series 2021, amending the 2021 budget and approving a supplemental appropriation of the General Fund and the Parks and Recreation Fund for expenditures related to the Public Affairs Consultant Professional Services Agreement. This is first reading.
I don't have a presentation for this one. On October 5th, City Council approved a professional services agreement with Blakely and Company for public affairs consulting services, which included a not-to-exceed amount of $69,625. Staff anticipates expending $28,175 of the contracted amount in 2021. This amount was not included in the General Fund and Parks and Recreation Fund budgets when they were adopted in December of last year. Staff is recommending the adopted 2021 budget be amended to include an expenditure of $22,821.75 in the general fund and $5,353.25 in the Parks and Recreation Fund. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions for Jessica? Pretty straightforward. All right, do we need a roll call on this, Laura, or is this just voice vote?
It's a roll call because it's a council bill.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill 16, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village amending the 2021 budget and approving the supplemental appropriation in the General Fund and the Parks and Recreation Fund for expenditures related to the Public Affairs Consultant Professional Services Agreement.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll take a roll call.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Will?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes?
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
All right, that completes, thank you, everyone. That completes item 10B. Now we're going to move into a meeting of the Cherry Hills Village Charlou Park Third Filing General Improvement District Board. We'll recess just for a moment, the regular city council meeting. All right, Laura, are we ready to call that? Are we ready for a roll call of that?
Board Member Safavi?
Here.
Board Member Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Board Member Brown?
Here?
Chair Stewart?
Here.
Board Member Gallagher?
Here.
Board Member Sheldon is absent. Board Member Blum?
Here.
Okay, we have no consent agenda item or unfinished business, but we have a new business, which is item 16A, public hearing on the 2022 budget for the district.
Sorry, we're getting the presentation up. Are you tired of me yet? This is my last one. Good evening. I know, I keep moving chairs too. Good evening, Chair Stewart and members of the board. Before the board this evening is the proposed budget for the Charlou Park Third Filing General Improvement District. The mill levy for the fund will be certified at 16 mills or $36,761 in property tax revenue for 2022. Expenditures include the bond and interest payment totaling $29,525 and $3,000 in administrative expenses for staff time, auditing, and legal expenses. There's no action required from the board tonight aside from holding a public hearing for the proposed 2022 budget. Staff will present a resolution for the board's consideration at the December meeting. I am available for any questions you may have.
Any questions? No questions? And so we do need to open a public hearing for this. All right. See if anyone has signed up. That would be a shock. No one has signed up. Hearing that, I opened the public hearing at 8:18, and seeing that there are no signups and no one seeking to speak, I will close the public hearing at 8:19. And there's nothing more on that to do, no action to take tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, though, the district meeting.
I move to adjourn the first meeting of the Cherry Hills Village Charlou Park Third Filing General Improvement District Board of Directors.
Was it the first meeting?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. It's not the first, but that's okay. All right, that meeting is adjourned. And now reports. Let's see. Quickly. I just have a brief report. In November, after our last meeting, the CML Executive Board meeting met, and I attended that. I also attended a meeting. I'm on the audit committee of the Budget and Audit Committee of the Executive Board and met there. Had the mayor's lunch on November 10th, and I was at Sheridan. Interesting discussions about the results of they were all had elections. I was the only one. I was the odd man out having no election. But we will have new mayors of Littleton, and I haven't met him yet, and new mayor of Englewood will take on. Mayor Pico, of course, didn't have any opposition. She's back, and George Lance was not elected, in contrast to their entire council, which was elected, and I understand almost all the incumbents won in Greenwood Village. So there's won't be a lot of new faces there. And I believe coming up we have the city managers. Do we have a city managers and mayors meeting this Friday? Or not? Am I wrong? I guess not then, huh? I had it on my calendar. I just want to check with you, but that's my report. No? Okay.
No report.
No report?
I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jay. I know you're down there somewhere. Thank you very much for the great work being done on the sidewalks. I think it's a big improvement. You bet. That's all I have.
No report?
No report.
Hey, I would like us maybe an update too on how the underground is going, Jay. Just since Councilor Sheldon's not here, I thought I better step in and ask when you report. City manager?
I'll let the directors go first.
Quick update. We continue to see movement on the undergrounding project. We hope to have it done by the end of the year. The poles will come down as soon as the new wires are run. They're just about done getting all the conduit and pole boxes in place, starting to reshape some of the ditches out there. And we will continue to push them to get that done, and we'll get all of our stabilization in place and seeded, so it'll be ready to hopefully green up come first spring.
I want to emphasize that Mr. Goldie said hope. That was not a promise.
Other reports?
In addition to the awards that we accepted tonight, HPM, our general contractor for John Meade Park, submitted the park for the AGC ACE Awards, which were last Friday night. So the park won the Associated General Contractors Award, and the park won silver in meeting the challenge of a difficult job because of dealing with all the water and active, Greenwood Gulch going through. And what beat us out was the new visitor center on top of Pikes Peak, which is a little bit hard to compete with construction at 14,000 feet. So we're very proud of that as well.
No report.
No report.
I just want to remind everyone that the December meeting is on Wednesday, December 8th.
And I would add just for Laura too, I had Laura pull the results from Cherry Hills Village for the election. They're interesting. So if anybody wants those, she can send those to you too. They're kind of, they did not track the state results. So
That's right. That's exactly right.
we were Cherry Hills has its own, moves to its own beat.
I just want to give I just have a couple real quick updates. Citizen Advisory Task Force was able to have its last meeting and able to start evaluating or absorbing some of the initial results from the open house and the surveys. We're getting close to 300 total surveys. Phenomenal response. A lot of information to chew on. And that survey closes at the end of the month. So if you know folks who still want to do it, we have heard some reports that a few people have been put off by the length of the survey. If you have single issue folks that really just care about one thing, they can just do that as well. They can just fill out one question. So again, we're just looking for as much feedback as we can get. So please encourage folks to do that. We are scheduled to just provide an update for you on January 4th. Again, we're not looking for you to start making policy decisions or anything like that. It's really just to keep you in the loop so that it's not an avalanche of information for you at the very end. It's just to keep you updated along the way. It'll be your first update since we've really gotten started with this. I just want to take another moment to ensure that the awards that we did receive tonight aren't glossed over and that they're appreciated for the weight of what they really are. I think I mentioned I was able to attend them, and the project of the year, it was the only one with a slide. I mean, it's the highlight of the night, but then especially the service that Ralph's been able to provide this community. The post office has their little motto, right? Through rain, through stuff. Ralph, that should be his motto, right? So we should count ourselves lucky that we have had an opportunity to allow him to work here, but also allow us to receive the unbelievable service that he's provided us. So, if you get a chance, please make sure you let him know about our appreciation for his work. And then finally, Thanksgiving is next week, and so city offices are closed on Thursday and Friday. And may you all do something fun. Yeah, Thanksgiving-y. That's right. It's my own.
Maybe, Chris, you could speak also to the police chief process for the council.
Sure. The RFP process, I think the RFP closes this Friday. Is that right? And so we're hoping to do the selection process for that in relatively short order. We likely would, we will not have the contract to you on the December 8th hearing. There's not enough time to do the selection and contract negotiation. However, we are likely to have a good estimate on the costs based on what we receive. Obviously, it'd still need to go through contract negotiation, but we'll have a much better feel for it than we do today. We're hoping to have then that contract to you in January so that we could basically get the notice of that job on the street almost immediately, if at all possible. So we are hoping to get the word out in early January, start receiving applications. We'll then get to that 3-panel process that I mentioned last time, where we have a community panel, which will likely have 2 council members on board, a law enforcement panel, which will include active, probably police chiefs from other surrounding jurisdictions, and a staff panel.
Good. I will comment on the master plan too. It must have said on there 5 minutes. It would take 5 minutes, because I have several comments that said it took me 30 minutes has been the average about what people have said it's taken them to fill it out.
Complete this 5-minute survey. Oh, well, we can fix that. Right before it closes, but
Just to sure.
not a 5 minutes.
Which is good. I mean, it's good. I got lots of comments on it about the survey. Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay. City attorney. Okay. All right. Any other business? Nothing
I move to adjourn.
Without objection, we are adjourned. Stand adjourned until our next meeting. Everybody stay safe.